Are we good on the stream?
Call to order, please.
Yes, Vice Chairman. Scott Wagner,
Here.
John Carpenter, and Joanne Lawson.
Here. We need to approve the minutes for July the 25th. Any changes? Oh, I'm sorry. Any changes to the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes from July.
Call the roll, please.
Scott Wagner,
Aye.
Joanne Lawson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. So we need to do swearing in of anyone who wants to testify this evening.
So if you want to speak,
If
stand up
y'all-
and raise your hand.
Yeah, just raise your hand and I will give you the oath. That's the only two? You're gonna,
Yes, you too, yes.
okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go on to our first case, case number 23-1048ZA. Would you like to tell us about that case?
Yes, Vice Chairman, and I would like to add the staff report as part of the official record. So I'm going to give you a little background history on this one. So I've got the property pulled up on the screen. It is approximately 9 acres, and it is zoned R1, which is a residential rural zoning. It is at the corner of 172nd Street and Endicott Road, so it's a corner lot. It has, as you can see on the screen, an accessory building and a single-family home. So the Land Development Code includes a regulation that states that an accessory building shall not exceed the footprint of the main or principal use, which in this case is the single-family home. You can obviously see on that aerial image that the accessory building is much larger from a footprint or aerial view wise. Now, this is a unique case because obviously the structure's already up. Normally we'd be asking for a variance before the structure was built. Staff became aware, was notified by the highway department that they had a property that had some, they were concerned that there were some code violations. So planning and zoning staff got involved, looked at some code violations, and we're still working on some other issues with the property owner on this property. But in that determination, we found out that the building had been built without a permit, and the owner can speak to this better than I can, but somewhere in the 2021, 22 range. Obviously, if a permit had been applied for, that's part of what the building inspector reviews, is to make sure it meets all the county code. We would have caught it at that point, gone over the options with the property owner to see what they were allowed to do and what they weren't. I did include the definition of accessory structure, and I'll read it because it is kind of small. So an accessory structure is a structure that is subordinate to and services a principal building or principal use legally existing on the same zoning lot. It is also subordinate in area, extent, and purpose to the principal building or principal use. And it goes on to give more information. So a unique case for sure. So when staff found out about this, we contacted the property owner, and I feel part of our job is to give options. We're trying to remedy the situation, but we've got to fit it within the county code. So we gave the property owner several options. They chose to proceed as a first choice to go with a variance request, and that's why we're here in front of the board tonight. So the section of code that we're referring to is section 151-6.3B5E, which I'm going to paraphrase, but basically says the accessory structure may not cover more of the lot than the principal building. The request is to allow a building that's approximately 8,000 square feet. Say it's roughly, that's a pretty big building, 80 by 100. And then the principal or the home on the property is approximately 4,000 square feet. So it's about half the size of the accessory building. The only exception to that building coverage rule is what's considered a farm use only building. So the county does not limit the size of farm use only buildings, which have to be used for storage of hay, grain, tractors. It's a static storage. It's not designed to be a shop, any kind of human occupancy, because obviously we're not going to limit the farmer that stores 5,000 bales of hay. But the applicant is not using this as a farm use building, so they don't have that option. So staff did some research on when this code came into fruition. So the first county code is from 1949. Starting with that code, it talks, by name, an accessory building is subordinate to the primary structure. So even in that 1949 code, it talks about it being subordinate to the principal dwelling on a property. And I went through all the codes up to the current one. Starting in a 1985 code, it starts talking about lot coverage and building coverage, and the accessory building not covering more of the lot than the principal dwelling. So it kind of evolves over time, but it exists in the code from the initiation of the code. So with all of our variance criteria or variance cases, we talk about these 4 criteria. They were included word for word in the transmittal or staff report that was sent to the board. This is kind of a summary, but I think it's important to go over these 4 criteria because this is really the burden of the applicant to show that they meet these 4 criteria. The first criteria talks about conditions that are unique to the subject property, not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and not be a result of the owner's intentional actions. The second criteria says the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the public interest or adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners. Third criteria is that it would constitute a practical difficulty upon the property owner. And the fourth criteria is it would not affect the public health, safety, or general welfare, nor destroy the intent of the comprehensive plan. So here is the area. You can see the subject property in red. And this is Watkins Mill State Park to the east. And this is kind of a unique area. It's got this color lot is ag zoning, so it's still got some large lots. And then it does have some interior street subdivisions like that subdivision there. But it's northeast of Kearney, and it's not in the area that we typically see a lot of development. So we did receive phone calls from neighbors leading up to tonight's meeting. We followed our public notice requirements, which included newspaper, posting a sign, and we sent 21 certified letters. The applicant did provide a letter addressing the variance criteria, and that is a picture of the building that we're talking about tonight. So I would be happy to answer any questions the board members have. The applicant is present, is going to give a presentation as well, but I would be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Obviously, the people didn't put the building up themselves. They hired a company to do it. Normally, I think about my barn going up, the gentleman who built it got all the necessary paperwork and, all that type of thing. So, I think a little bit of this has to go on to whoever built the building. But as the building was going up, there was no complaint or anything made to them by neighbors or...
We were not aware of the building until after it was constructed.
After it was up. I
will tell you, I did reach out to the contractor just to make sure that they knew that building permits were required in Clay County. I don't know the conversations that were had between the owner and the contractor, but the contractor stated that they require that the property owner get the permits when they build.
Okay.
But whether that's true or not, I can't speak to that.
Okay. And how many responses, if you had any, did you have?
From neighbors?
Yeah.
Oh, we had several calls. I would say probably between 5 and 10 phone calls.
Okay, 5 to 10.
I don't know that I would call it opposition. There were a lot of questions, but there may be some folks here tonight that want to speak to this.
Okay. No further questions. I'd like the applicant to come and state your case.
So my name's Kyle Mason. I do own the property there. I did pay to have that building built. I believe who Kip contacted is the company that I actually bought the building from. There's a third-party company that installed the building, and I was under the, assumption that they, like you said, that they would pull their own permits, just as the solar company that I had paid previous to put solar panels in, they took care of where it needed to be, how tall it needed to be, pulled their permits. So that's kind of where I was at on that point. And then from here, I've just tried to work with Kip to find out what remedy we can do to move forward on this situation, so. You have any questions?
Yes, the only one I have, what do you use that building for?
So I actually do have a couple tractors in there, but regularly I use it for demolition derby cars. Like, that's what I do for a side hobby. Obviously, you don't want to look at that when you drive by, so that inside of a building is kind of where I'm at.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I have a classic car in there, side by side, 3 tractors, Bobcat, my lawnmower, things of that nature.
Okay. All right. Do you have any questions? I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone here who wishes to speak further for this building? Yeah, yes, for? Or against. Okay, yeah, if there's no for, then if you wish to speak against the building, then go ahead and come forward and state your case.
My name is Suzanne Wittar. We live down the street from this house. I've spoken with multiple of my neighbors that live closer. We're 1,200 feet out. The neighbors I talked to are within that 1,000 feet because we didn't get a letter. This is an eyesore. There's nothing else to say about it. I wondered if you did demolition derby because there's cars outside. There was even one on its side when I went by the other day. I think we counted 15 vehicles outside this location. There are big trucks, small trucks, cars, the gravel. I know you guys are just talking about the building, but I don't know what's in the building because everything's outside. There's a lot of concrete, not a lot of grass, not a lot of trees. He's got a beautiful pond maybe that he's putting in. But we want to live in the country. We don't want to live in town. We don't want to live in the middle of town, which is where I would assume this building would be if it was in the correct area for it. So several of my neighbors and I, we don't want this. We would ask that you go with the rules, the laws that we already have in place. The rest of us are, going by those. This could affect our property value if somebody was to move close to this and not want to see that, or if this variance passes, my concern is that other people in the area, once they move in, will try to do the same thing. It's a very quiet neighborhood. There's kids in the area. I'm sorry, but we don't want this.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Do you have any?
Kip, appreciate everyone's discussion. It allows me to ask better questions of you.
Thank you.
First question, the current plan suggests that you cannot have a building of a size larger than the primary residence. Does it speak to how many buildings you can have?
It does not. We don't have a lot coverage because generally our lots are so big that nobody would get near that coverage percentage.
Gotcha.
So that would have been one of the options that would have been presented at the time a building permit was requested. You can't do this size of building, but you can do 2 separate buildings.
Basically, that could add up to the same total square footage.
Correct.
Got it. Do we suggest anything to the last point that was made by our guest? Do we require any kind of, for lack of a better term, shading and or protection, like from an eyesight standpoint along the roadway? So if part of the issue is I can drive by and now I can see it, do we provide any sort of a guidance as far as how one screens? That's the word I'm looking for, screens the building.
We do not for accessory buildings.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you for this property, and if I go back to this picture, so I know Highway Department is working with the owner on reducing the width of that driveway. That is too wide for a residential driveway. Planning and zoning has concerns about a possible commercial use, which would be handled through code enforcement once we do our research, so we're working on that. We do have junk and debris and derelict vehicle code that will be enforced as well. Those are separate items than just the building, but we thought we would start with the building, figure out what we're doing there, and then some of those other concerns that the adjacent property owner mentioned will be handled through code enforcement or the highway process.
Gotcha, gotcha. So there was a third one I had, and now I'm trying to remember what it was. If you delay me, it'll probably come to me, but then go for it. Then it'll come back. Go for it.
It happens as you get older.
That's what they say.
So quick question. Is there something, I mean, I see both sides of this. But is there something we can do, maybe to the point of making sure a lot of cars and trucks and things of that nature, kind of clean up the area? Or what other options do these people have? They've got this big building up there. What are we going to tell them?
Well-
You know, if we can't say get rid of the building, but, or I guess we could.
Well,
but-
yes, we can, and we've had people had to move or demolish buildings before.
Oh, what options can we give
So
them?
and that's what we want to do. We want to give them options. So the cars and the stuff in the front of the building, we will work with the property owner to remedy those violations. So I think that will handle itself through the code enforcement. But for the building, I mean, it doesn't meet the code. So variance is an option if they meet those criteria. We gave the owner the option of if they attach this to the house, it becomes part of the house, therefore the size of the building goes away. Now, I don't know if that's possible or if it's positioned close enough, but to give you an example, the county used to have a rule, regulation that said your garage couldn't sit closer to the street than your house, and people would get around that one by attaching the garage to the house. So that would be an option. Another option would be expanding the footprint of their house. Now, they're so far off there, that's a big addition. Now, decks count towards that, so maybe they could get there. But those were the options that we gave the property owner, was the variance request, demoing a portion of the building. Is there a way to make it two separate buildings? Adding it to the house or adding onto the house. Those were the only options that I think that we could come up with that would meet the code.
Okay, one more question then. When you say attached to the building, could it be something as simple as a covered walkway attaching the building to the house?
It would have to be a roofed, like breezeway, for us to consider an attachment to the house, yes.
Okay.
And we had a similar situation to this. And the difference was the building was much closer to the house and it was much easier to do that. And that's what they chose to do.
Thank you very much. Kip, the other question that I had, and maybe your map illustrates this best. This lot is not something that we would consider to be something that would be taken or added to any other city in the near term, right? Nothing that would, or I guess we shouldn't, at no point should we consider that, hey, at some point this is going to be annexed by somebody and therefore we need to be thinking in that direction as well.
No, I believe it's outside any annexation area. It's pretty well out there. I guess I didn't give the option of, if there is a commercial use, we could look at commercial zoning and putting the building on commercial zoning. But if you look on that map, there is zero commercial zoning in this area. And staff would consider that spot zoning, so I don't see that as an option either.
I would agree. Thank you.
Is it permissible for me to ask the lady who spoke against it, if I can I ask her questions now?
I think that's
Can I
fine.
go back and ask? Okay. I have a question for you. You want to, so I can hear you when you answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you this. If the property were kept neat, the building's there, but, and you now have heard, we could make the building smaller, attach it to the house. I mean, there's some options there. They're pretty pricey probably. But were that area to be policed up and kept neat with all of the cars and trucks and stuff inside the building, would it be satisfactory to you, or would you still have concerns?
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
How long have you talked to him about the code violations and not just the building, but the concrete and all the other stuff? How long has that been going on?
I hate to even throw out a timeline, but it's been over a year.
So in over a year, he has been aware that this is a problem.
But I will say, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I will say some of that is on my department. I haven't had a full-time code enforcement official. I do now, and that's why we're moving forward. So I would expect that timeline to not be that way in the future.
Okay, so that's my thing. I think that, I'm sorry, he's been well aware of it. Again, 15 cars. The demolition, it was on its side. He knew that this was coming, like this meeting was coming. And I really appreciate you guys trying to make a way for him, because I would assume that making the building in two, heck, that split it down the middle and have a door on each side of it. I mean, you just did that. That's not gonna cost that much money. Is it gonna be a pain? Yeah. Is it gonna fix everything that he's done out there? No. And if he knew that this was coming and what have you, why didn't he I know supposedly there's a tractor and stuff like that inside, but he was well aware of what was going on, in my opinion, when he did what he did. And so I would like to say, yeah, I would like to have seen him try to maybe put some evergreens up, but he put more concrete up. The house is beautiful. She's landscaped it. There's chickens out there. It looks very homey in the front part of it. But when you go down that street, when you're going up that street, all you see is concrete. All you see is big buildings. And he's the only one in our neighborhood that is doing this. And remember, I'm not the only one. He did get 5 to 10 calls regarding this. So it's kind of one of those things. I don't want the gentleman to have to pay the money to do what he has to do to the buildings and do what he does to the concrete, but he was well aware of this before he did the building and he did the concrete and all of that stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Is there any way I may speak?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I'm not for sure what concrete she's referring to, other than there is 5 loads of gravel sitting in front of that building in a picture. Like, you go back to the road view of where you had it.
Oh, there.
So that's 5 loads of gravel
Yeah.
right there. I mean, I do own 5 trailers that are currently licensed. What do we have? 11 vehicles? $1,100,000 vehicles that I pay taxes on in this county, licensed in this county. I personally don't think it's gonna make the property value go down. If anything, when I bought the house, I paid $512,000 for it. Before I built the shop, I had it appraised, and it appraised for high sevens. It wasn't quite 800,000. I imagine if I appraised it now, it'd probably be close to $1 million with the building being built. I built a nice pond on the left-hand side of that building. If you're looking at it, it's not 100% finished. That was part of the things that we had worked together, is that it needed seeded, grass to grow. we're about at that point, I would say. And yes, from time to time, there is a demolition derby car that's sitting outside that I either haven't pushed in the building. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. So, do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean his value, I meant our value.
Okay. Okay, yes, sir.
May I have an opportunity to speak?
Yeah, now, did you get sworn
I
in?
didn't swear in. I'd like to.
Okay, do we need to swear him in?
Yes,
for you?
please.
Okay, yeah, come on forward. Yeah, we want to hear whoever wants to speak.
Hi there.
Hold up your hand, please.
Oh, yes,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Sean Laffey. I am 17308 Endicott, directly north of the property, 2 houses north.
Okay.
I think it's obvious from the giant driveway, the gravel, the building itself not being permitted, that this individual has no intentions of following any code in this county. I think the biggest issue for me is to approve this sets a precedence for everybody to build a larger building than the footprint of their own home. I was made to do that back 2 or 3 years ago when I built a shop. I had to abide by the code. I did, got permits. Everybody knows you got to get permits. I don't know how that could happen where you don't, other than you don't care. In this case, that's probably what happened. But back to precedence, that's 8,000 square feet. That's twice the size of the house. You approve this. I know this same individual has moved lots of dirt at this property. The pond, my understanding from what I've heard from my neighbors, is to pull dirt out of the pond, move it west to the other side of the property to build it flat so we could build another shop even larger than the one that's existing. He can speak on this. This is rumor from other neighbors that have spoken to him. But you approve this, sets precedence. He could build whatever he wants to out there.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Kip, can you throw up the 4 criteria again, please?
Oop.
So would you speak to the first one?
And you're asking me, correct?
Yes, sir, because I hope you know the answer to this.
Okay.
But if you would, speak to the unique to the property piece of that criteria, if you would.
So yeah, it says arises from conditions that are unique to the property, not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and not be a result of the owner's intentional action. Generally, something unique would be there's floodplain, there's a stream, there's your septic system is in the way, and you, like back in the day when we had that rule that you couldn't put your accessory building forward of the house, we would get requests for putting it forward to the house, and the unique conditions would be your septic system's in the way, you've got floodplain back there, your electric line's back there, there's a gas line, there's a power line, something like that would be unique. And, just to be as transparent as we can be, our recommendation was for them not to apply for a variance. We felt it was going to be very difficult for them to show that they meet these criteria. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, and if I may, it just strikes me that unlike, just by way of comparison, a couple that we had back in July where we did have an issue of floodplain and some other things, in here, my observation is simply that we have a flat piece of property and a structure got built that wasn't permitted. That was an action of the owner, but there was nothing within the property itself that either lent itself to a structure of that size or suggested that it was built in the manner that it was. Am I thinking of this correctly?
Yes, and there's multiple 9 to 10 acre lots. Hundreds of 9 to 10 acre R1 zone lots throughout the county. So you probably noticed in the staff report, on that 4th criteria, staff put that we didn't feel this would destroy the intent of the comprehensive plan, but we do have concerns if you approve this variance, that we're either going to be inundated with variance requests for this,
Right.
or this is just a bad rule and we need to revisit this rule.
Right, right. To the extent that our last speaker spoke to that sort of issue, which I understand. I guess my feeling, quite honestly, is that it does invite others to do the same. I understand, and I have no reason to doubt, sir, your position that, hey, you expected those permits to be pulled, they weren't. Now you have this. I get it, but I'm also guided somewhat by what it invites if we approve the variance that you've requested. That being said, and I think Mr. Jones spoke to it, there are some options here, which I'm not sure at the end of the day if that resolves some of the issues that the neighbors have said. Again, if you can do basically two of 4,000 feet, I can do math. 4 plus 4 equals 8, and you may end up with the same sort of issue. But I guess if we are to be guided by the criteria, then I find it difficult to get past the first one in this case. So I don't know, and I guess this is a question directed to you, Kip, but to the chair's pleasure as well. I don't know if it makes any sense to not take action on this variance this evening, to see if there is further conversation to have. I know I am, based on the first criteria alone, I am uncomfortable with moving forward with the variance request. I'm not sure if that will change, quite honestly. But I do feel like if that is what we are to guide our decision-making by, it's difficult for me to get past that one. So I'll just end my comments there, Madam Chair.
All right, so then I think we need to vote on this, correct? And now, has everybody said what they want to say? Yes, sir. Yeah.
Can I speak up here?
Oh, absolutely. I think you were sworn in, were you not?
Yes, I got it. That's fine. Okay. For me, it boils down to one thing.
Can you state your name and address,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry. William Whittar. I live just down the street, 17,000. It boils down to one thing. If you're coming from the north, you come down Endicott Road, you look over to his house, beautiful house, beautiful. They've done really nice stuff to it. You make that turn, you feel like you're in a commercial district. I don't want to live in a commercial district. I can see that commercial district from my window. That's my problem. Okay.
One last question for Kip, and then I'm happy to make I'm happy to make something at that time. We are not to just so that everybody knows, we are not to contemplate some of the other issues that have been discussed along that other frontage, correct? Those are dealt with in a different manner from your codes team, correct?
Correct. We are just here to discuss the size of the building and whether their request meets those 4 criteria. I would recommend, if the neighbors are concerned about those other issues, please contact me at the office and we'll help them work through that.
Very good, thank you. Thank you. If that is the case, then Madam Chair, I move to, is the correct motion to deny the request for variance under case number 23-104?
Yes.
And there you go.
Okay. Then let's call for the vote, please.
Scott Wagner.
Aye.
Joanne Lawson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. So we would like to go on to case number 23105, BZA. Would you like to please read the information?
Yes, I'd like to add this report as part of the official record. This is a variance request to allow for a pool cover to substitute for a 4-foot wall or barrier with self-latching gate. Currently, the property is roughly 29 acres. It's zoned agricultural, has access from a highway. This property falls under the urban services tier of our 2008 comprehensive plan. You can see on your screen, I have highlighted there the general area where that pool is located. We don't have an updated picture of it, so. And then obviously pointing out where the house is. This is a section of code the applicant is requesting a variance from. It's section 151-6.3E. It details our requirements for swimming pools and hot tubs. With the first 2 points on this, and I'll try to paraphrase this, but dealing with outdoor swimming pools, that they shall be enclosed by a fence or a wall with a self-latching gate. The fence or the wall shall be a minimum of 48 inches or 4 foot. And then the third point on there is that in no case should a swimming pool cover substitute the required fence or wall. Pool and hot tub regulations first appeared in the 1985 code. It was very generic. However, the 4-foot tall fence or barrier regulation appeared in the 1996 code and has evolved as they cleaned up verbiage of the code as we've progressed. As with all of our variance requests, we looked at our land development code variance approval criteria. This is the full criteria. The full criteria is attached to the staff report we sent out, and what's on your screen is summaries of each criteria. Each of these criteria must be met, and the burden of proof is on the applicant to show that this criteria has been met. The first criteria states that requested variance arises from conditions that are unique to the property, not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and not the result of the owner's intentional action. Granting the variance will not be contrary to public interest or adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners. Constitutes a practical difficulty upon the property owner, and not affect the public health, safety, or general welfare, nor destroy the intent of the comprehensive plan. This is the surrounding area. The subject property is there in the red. You can kind of see this R1 zone, which is a residential zoning, is kind of surrounding it over to the north and the west of the property. We have some R5 zoning towards the south, and we have some larger lot agricultural properties over to the east. Staff has received calls with questions leading up to the Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting. We do our standard public notice requirements with variance cases that include publishing it in the newspaper, posting a sign on site, and sending certified letters. With this case, we sent a total of 38. One additional thing I would like to add is we attached a permit for this pool to the staff report. It should be one of the last pages of that staff report. And on that permit, states under the remarks is that a 4-foot tall fence with a self-latching gate is required. The applicant has provided a letter addressing the variance criteria, pictures, and the applicant also has a presentation. Staff would be happy to answer any questions the members may have, and again, the applicant is present. So.
Did you get any responses back when you sent everything out?
We've received some calls on this case. I don't believe they really indicated whether they were for or against it. It was more just general questions on the case itself.
Good evening, Chris Jones. I'm the property owner with my wife Mallory here in attendance. 12702 A Highway, as you can see. There's a lot of information that we provided, and I don't know how much you guys have actually read through it or acknowledged or whatever. So I'll go over some of the bullet points that we feel are important. instead of reading down this whole thing, unless you, unless you really want me to. So when we decided to build this swimming pool, we hired Tiger Pools out of Excelsior Springs, and he came out and looked at the property, and he's the one that stated, hey, there was a law in Missouri that a fence wasn't required if you had a safety auto cover that was able to be closed every night instead of a winter cover that you had to physically put on in the winter time. The safety cover that we chose was within the national safety codes regulations, so it can exceed the poundage. I think it's 485 pounds, I think is what it's stated in the articles. It can hold at least that. The gentleman that we purchased the cover from, as you can see in our writing, that they've pulled up and actually seen cattle standing on this cover before. So it's not easily penetrated at all. I mean, it's even hard to cut. We do close the cover when we're not using the pool. We have plenty of deer, coons, and so forth running around, plus our own animals that's running around as well. So not only that, their safety. We don't have kids, but we know there's kids in the neighborhood. We're right in the middle of 30-acre plot, which kind of makes this kind of a unique situation. We're not right next door to any houses. Now, our fence line to the north is Carriage Lane. There's some houses there, obviously, but the closest house is in the back is more than, it's probably a half a mile or a quarter mile plus. The number A, Kip had asked me to go down the four bullet points, and like I said, there's quite a bit of information there. But the first thing on there is the it's an Infinity 4000, and documentation is also in the pictures of what that actually is. So the auto cover, if you're not familiar with what the actual auto cover is, it slides in a track on the side of the pool that's anchored into the concrete. So there's a picture of me actually standing out there with a pool pump on it that, if anything falls on this cover, it's like a big water bed, basically. You're not gonna go through it. It reduces our chemical usage. It holds the heat and cool in, so the efficiency's there. In our opinion, it's a far better choice than, or option than a fence. There's been cases that kids have fallen in the pool and gotten through the fence or pushed something up against the fence and climbed over it and gotten in the pool and drowned. With this, you can walk right out on it, and that's just not going to happen. So it's a far better option. It doesn't, if where we sit and where the pool is, nobody would even known that we had this pool. You can't see it from the road. You can't see it from the neighbor's house. Wintertime, maybe when the leaves are off, you could probably see that there's something there. But nobody would even know that this pool is even here if we weren't in this situation and had to notify everybody. So we just don't have kids or anybody that goes that far. I know now, knowing that the code is a fence, we weren't told that up front. So was that our due diligence to check on that, even though we hired the pool company and they pulled the permit and so forth? No, because he had told us that was the situation, and so we just went with it. But with the research that we did preparing for this application and so forth, and the other counties and states and federal regulations and so forth that opt to choose this other than a fence, it makes a lot of sense. We have a friend that built a pool up in Smithville, Clay County, Smithville, outside the city limits, and I asked him about it. He said that Smithville actually told him that a safety cover was better than a fence, and they prefer that over a fence. Is it in their codes? I don't know. I didn't look it up, but I know there's several cities and counties around that have changed their codes and opted to go to safety cover or a fence because it is a better option. So kind of on the first notion, we like I say, we live on 30 acres. The keypad to open the cover and close the cover is in a locked room, and it's got a lock on the coat. So some people may choose to put it outside, but it still has a lock on it and it's weatherproof or something. So nobody can just go up there and open or close that pool. And it's in view of the pool. Per code, it has to be in view of the pool, so you can't close it while somebody's in there as well. So all the safety factors are there. And we just asked for a variance on this and maybe revisit the code to allow for, future pools in this same situation. I can understand if we were right next door in a neighborhood and kids running around and so forth and you're out there, but in our situation, I can't speak for everybody, but in our situation, that pool is closed unless we're using it. I don't want to pay any more for heat or chemicals that I have to, or water evaporation or so forth. All the bullet points, other than the last one really doesn't permit to ours, but all the bullet points that we were asked to put together in your documentation there pretty much boils around that whole thing. It's national certified, it's a better option, better to hold chemicals and so forth. It's a more efficient option, and the unique position that we're in is we're in the middle of 30 acres. To put a fence around that pool in the middle of 30 acres is just it's not feasible for us. All the piping and everything, because we were told that this cover actually is accepted in lieu of a fence. All of our drains, our electrical, and all that stuff is already in the ground around that. So to put a fence in now would be like a nightmare. So, we just ask that you look at the photos. I mean, we're passionate about our animals. We feed our deer, we feed our bird. We feed all that stuff. We got cats and coons and everything. Even the claws of a deer or a raccoon or anything is not going to penetrate that. So if they can't penetrate it, how much safer can you get? You can't penetrate that like you can penetrate a fence and walk through and fall into an open pool. So I guess that would be our ask.
I have one question.
Sure.
So when you say you guys are going to go leave and go into town, do you then close that anytime you aren't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Every time we're not using it, that pool cover is closed.
okay, all right.
And to add to that, we own a camper and we like to go camping, so we'll go camping. If I didn't have that automatic safety cover closed on that pool when we go camping for a week or two or what have you, we have cameras around our house, obviously, but who's to say that a deer or anything's not going to jump a fence and fall in the pool and drown while we're gone?
Yeah.
Or a kid or whatever. So it's a peace of mind for us to know that thing is closed and we don't have to worry about it, because we're the only one that's got the lock and key. So.
No, just the observation that, I feed deer too. They eat all my hostas, corabels, and everything else. So I know that they can be quite invasive when they feel like it, and a 4-foot fence does not stop them in any way. And so my take is simply that to me the uniqueness here is the technology, which probably was not contemplated when this, when these various things were developed, at least the last time. And so, Yeah,
The covers have definitely got a lot better in just the last 5 years.
yeah, no doubt. So, I mean, I think if we are speaking to what is it that we are trying to accomplish here as far as safety concerns and other things, certainly the technology speaks to that. I may ask a question of Mr. Jones, if that's okay. I think you've done a
That
great
Jones or
job.
this Jones?
Oh, that's right. Did you go to the same family reunion? No, I'm kidding. This Jones. Your description was fine, and I saw the pictures and saw how you could step in that thing and be fine. So I
Right.
appreciate those visuals. The question for this, Mr. Jones, is as far as staff's position related to the cover versus fence.
Well, I mean, the code is pretty black and white in this situation, that it requires a fence. However, if you feel those criteria have been met, then it could be approved. However, if you do that, I think staff would want to revisit this code, because I think we do have several properties that are similar to Mr. Jones's, that those folks would probably want to do the same thing. So I think if that's the direction the board goes, we would at some point work on a revision that would exempt out properties of a certain size that met certain regulations or stipulations. What that is, I don't know, because I'm just processing it now, but I think that's staff's perspective, that a code change probably would be wise if that's the direction we want to go.
No, I tend to agree with that position, and I think, again, it's a matter of, in my mind, that depending on when the code was last touched, and I don't know if you know when it was last dealt with, unless you do know.
Oh, we haven't changed the swimming pool code. I'm not sure. It's been a while.
Okay.
Now, and I don't think Shane went over this, but Mr. Jones mentioned this, that Shane did do the research on the adjacent jurisdictions, and it's a hodgepodge. Like Mr. Jones said, Smithville allows a cover.
Right.
Kearney and Liberty require fences.
Yeah.
There were a couple more. Platte County, I think, allowed a cover. So it's about half and half.
Gotcha.
I know Lee Summit went from a fence to a pool cover, and then went back to a fence, and then now went back to the pool cover because
Gotcha.
they felt it was a safer.
And there's no, as I recall, your property's flat, so the pool itself sits level with the ground around it, right?
It's flat to the south of our house, kind of goes down to an incline to the creek, which
Yeah.
is all trees. And
But there's no drops, for
No.
example, right?
No.
Which would normally then also require some sort of
Correct.
fencing there.
No.
Madam Chair, I tend to think that this may be the sort of trouble that we don't mind inviting. And I think to our Mr. Jones's earlier comment, I think he is correct that if we see the value of that this technology allows, then it is unwise to do a continuous number of one-offs. You should be looking at the code. I don't think anyone plans on swimming between now and the next few months. Maybe you do, I'm not sure. But,
Ours is still open, so.
well, I hear it's going to be warm this weekend, so
Yeah.
maybe that's okay. I tend to think, because of the uniqueness of the technology, the fact of the matter is this is the direction people are going to be going. I don't have an issue with that, so I'll stop right there.
Okay, thank you. I would just say to you, we live way out in the country, and, there's many times we've had to chase people out of the woods that's on our property, hunting there without asking. People get a little invasive sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So I would caution you, while I agree with what you say, just make sure that you're extremely diligent in covering that any time you walk away from that house.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know.
We are home, we're semi-retired, so we're home most of all the
Oh,
time
okay.
anyway. So like I say, if we go in to grab a bite to eat or so forth, obviously we're not gonna cover it because we're right there. But if we leave the property whatsoever or go in at night, it is covered up. Like right now,
Good.
it's covered.
Okay.
And
Now-
and it's heated and cooled, so I don't wanna lose that efficiency anyway.
Okay. I do need to ask this now, if there's anybody here that wishes to speak either in support or against.
You want
Yes,
to sit
sir.
down?
Did you swear yourself, did we swear you in?
I have been sworn in, no.
Okay, then let's do it. Come on up and. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay,
My name
speak.
is Alfred Butt. I'm at 11219 Carriage Lane. And when this gentleman showed on the overview here, the plat of the ground, it did not show the easement. Would you enlighten me on that easement there on his property? And what,
So I'm not sure what the question is, I guess.
can you tell me where that easement is on that property?
Easement for,
The high transmission lines that go through there?
no, I can't because that wasn't part of this case. So,
My question is, sir, how far away from that pool is to the easement?
At least 300 foot.
That's all I've got.
So the power lines, if you look just south of that pool where that patch of tree is, and then there's a little clearing, the power lines go right through their diagonal from the highway, back to the corner of our property.
Because they come on our property a lot, it's where you go first.
Yeah.
So we're at least 300 foot, and the building easement to the power lines are 100 foot.
Thank you very much.
and
Appreciate it.
and that would have been checked with the building permit for the pool, but we didn't consider that for tonight's application.
I can make a motion if you'd like. All right, Madam Chair, I move to approve the variance for case number 23-105 BZA.
Scott Wagner.
Aye.
Joanne Lawson.
Aye.
Motion carries. And I just have a couple comments, if that's okay. No meeting next month, so next time we get an application, we'll let you know. We did give you a calendar for next year's meetings. We did move the one in December and the one in November to get them away from Christmas and Thanksgiving. But if you take some time and just look at it, if you have any thoughts, we'll wait about a week before we book this room. Just keep in mind, generally, we only have 3 or 4 meetings a year. So, but let me know if you have any comments on that, and I think that's all staff has.
Thank you so much.
Yep.